What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to show you how to support LSP or language server protocol inside of Neovim. If you're following along with the Neovim from Scratch series, then you can head over to this repository and you can check out the 06 LSP branch. If you're doing it with your own Neovim config, that's fine too, but you'll have to check out the branch to see all the code and enter it yourself. Alright, so to get started, before I show you how to actually install it or set anything up, I'm just going to show you how it works. So if we open up a Lua file to start with here, we're just going to open up this menu. So we're going to go into command mode and we're going to type lsp install info and press enter. And so from here you're going to notice that I have some installed servers already. So Pyright, that's for Python, TS servers for TypeScript and like the JavaScript family. JSON LS is obviously for JSON, HTML, so on and so forth. And some Neovim Lua is especially useful because you can use this to configure your Neovim config since, that's written in Lua. All right, and so to install one, we could just, go through this list, right? But I think it's pretty nice to just kind of search for whatever you're looking for. So we're searching for like maybe CSS or something. And then you just press I on top of it and it'll install it for you. If you'd like to update it, you can just do, I think it's just U, yeah. And so now we just updated that. And if you'd like to remove one, you can just press capital X on top of it and get rid of it. All right, so now let's talk about some of the diagnostics you're going to get. And this is going to be with some Neovim Lua. And we can actually see that some Neovim Lua is running by doing LSP and just info. Okay, and it tells you that the Neovim Lua client is attached to this buffer. All right, so that's how you can know which particular one you have active. All right, so now let's just get rid of this double quote over here, and you can see immediately we get a red X letting us know there's a problem. And if we press GL on top of it, and I'll show you how to set key bindings later, but if we press GL on top of it, it'll let us know about the problem in more detail. All right, and so the next thing I'll show you is just some completion that's built into CMP. And if you don't already have completion set up, you can check out the video before this one. But this video will be kind of integrated with NVIM CMP. All right, so let's start typing require, and you can see that a few of these are from LSP, right? They're not snippets or from the buffer. They're actually provided by the language server. So yeah, you can kind of get a feel for it there. That's pretty much all of the features you're going to get for every single language that is supported through a language server, right? All right, so let's go check out a couple other languages. So we'll go open up this to-do list repository and we'll open up main.py here. You'll notice that we got some errors off the bat because I don't have a particular virtual environment active for this, so some of these modules just aren't found. So we can just press GL over top of them, and it just says that this import can't be resolved, and then just some other errors that Pyright is giving us. And we can again know that Pyright is active here because we can do LSP info, and you can see that Pyright is active. So this is Pyright for Python. It just automatically starts just like the Lua one. And let's go take a look at another repository. We'll go look at my blog really fast, which is written in JSX. So let's open up source components header.jsx. One thing you'll notice about this is that the highlighting is not so good, and that's fine because in a later video I'm going to show you how to get all really good syntax highlighting with Tree Sitter, and that should be maybe 1 or 2 videos from now. Okay, so let's see, but we're here mostly for the LSP. So you can see that we have an info thing here just letting us know that this particular import's not being used. We can do something like console.log, and you can see that it can find all of the methods associated with console, right? And it gives you this nice documentation window over here as well, letting you know, some blurb about it, I guess, and maybe some things you can pass it in some cases. All right, yeah, so that's, a few different, and I'll just show you again. We can do LSP info, and there you go. This one detected that this file is JavaScript React, and TS server is active for JavaScript React, and all of these other file types here. All right, so that's kind of it working. That's pretty much everything you're gonna notice when you install this and get it all set up. And so now actually let's do that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a couple plugins. So we're gonna go under Lua user plugins, which is how I kind of do all of my files. But you know, wherever you keep your plugins, you're gonna add this there. And so the plugins that I want you to add are going to be just Neovim LSP config, which is kind of just like the bare bones LSP config setup. It's actually supported by core Neovim, right? So this is from the Neovim repositories. Or the Neovim organization. So yeah, you can know that this is a solid plugin that'll be around for a while. This is another one, Neovim LSP installer. This one is by William Bowman here. And it essentially just bootstraps all of the LSPs for you. So you saw that thing I did earlier where I could just install everything super easy and it just starts up without, you know, doing much. That's what this helps me do here. So I really like this plugin. Maybe there will be another plugin in the future that kind of wraps the LSP config stuff. And if there is, you know, maybe you'll end up using that. But this is kind of that concept. And then this guy over here is CMP Neovim LSP, and that's what was actually giving us the LSP completions for CMP and for our completions. So for instance, if I start typing something and you can see all these LSP options here, that's what this guy provides, right? And that's an extra source for Neovim CMP, and if you watch the video before this one, you'll know what I mean by that. Okay, so let's show you all the configuration for all of these things. Okay, it's just removing an old plugin there, and that's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at our file structure here and the new files that we've added for LSP. Now you can see that I have the same exact kind of setup here as like the other ones, so I always do like options, keymaps, plugins, color scheme, CMP, and now I have LSP. Now LSP is a little bit different. LSP I've given its own directory here because there's a good amount of stuff you're going to be adding with LSP. So I figured it's better not to just do it in one file. It's better to do it in a directory dedicated to everything LSP related. This is where things like null ls are going to go in the future, and where all of your settings for different language servers are going to be. So that would really clutter up out here. So I just think LSP should get its own directory. Okay, and here's what happens, and here's a new Lua concept that I'm going to introduce here. When you require something, so if we go back here, we're usually requiring something by name, and then you drop the .lua afterwards, right? So this is cmp.lua under the user directory here. This is color scheme.lua, this is options.lua, so on and so forth, but we drop the Lua, right? Now you'll notice that we do the same thing, but with the directory. Right, so we have user.lsp, but LSP is a directory. That's fine because what it's going to do is it's going to immediately look for init. That's the first thing that's kind of like, you can imagine that what this actually does, if you have an init in there, is it does like init.lua and actually sources that. So it just drops off the init and drops off the Lua. So that's kind of a new concept for directories. If you want to require directories, they're immediately going to look for an init.lua. All right, so let's get started with init.lua since that's kind of the entry point. The first thing I do is I just do a quick protected call for LSP config. Basically, this just says if LSP config is not available, then just return and don't set up anything for LSP because it'll just break anyway. So that's what this is doing right here. It's just a quick check to see that LSP is available. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to require user.lsp installer. What is that? That's this file right here. After that, I'm going to require user.lsp.handlers, and then I'm going to call a function. And I haven't really talked about writing functions or how you can export functions from files and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about that in this video as well. So this video is going to show you how to write some Lua code, and it's also going to set up LSP for you. All right, so let's take a look at LSP installer first. We do the same thing here. If you can't find LSP installer, then just return because you know, nothing here is going to work. So we might as well just jump out if it doesn't work. Again, you could print something here to tell you that it didn't work, but I just leave it as it is. All right, so we have LSP installer.onServerReady, and all this stuff here, this comes from this repository here, this Neovim LSP installer repository. You can check this out, and you can see where I'm getting all this from. If we look up here, this should be basically exactly that. So we'll close that and just come back over here really fast. And you can see the only thing I have different is I'm just requiring it different. I return if it doesn't work. They just require it. Everything else is basically exactly the same. You see LSP installer on server ready function server, just the same way here. The only other thing is I am actually passing some options, and we'll talk about those in a minute. These are basically just functions. So what happens for every single language server on attach, and then also some extra capabilities if your language server supports them. And we'll talk about what those capabilities are and what this on attach function is in a minute. But just for now, that's what we have in here. Okay, so now we're going to do something depending on if the server is, some particular server. So you remember before, if we do LSP install info, you can see that we have names of servers right here. And so if the name of the server, right, then what we're going to do is we're actually going to extend a table here for options. So we're going to extend this options table, and we're going to add some specific settings for JSON. And I'm going to show you some cool things that you can add for JSON, so you can get like JSON to recognize special files, like for instance package.json or a few others. But I'll demo, I guess, the package.json one. All right, and then let's talk about this other one with some Lua. We also do some special stuff if it's some Lua, because we want it to recognize Vim as so you'll see like we use this Vim kind of global all over the place because it has a lot of useful things inside of it, right? So we're going to use that there. And we're going to support it with some of the settings that we have for some Lua. So that's what that is. And then after we're good, we just set up the server with the options provided. And that's pretty much it. So that's what this file looks like. Let's see, should I go over handlers or should I go over kind of the settings for some of the servers first? I guess the first thing I'll do is I'll go over the handlers and the onAttach function and the capabilities. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so if we go inside of user LSP again, and where this will be is it'll be inside this handlers file here. Okay, so let's go inside of handlers, and we're going to look for a couple things. This handlers file kind of handles a lot of things, but let's just quickly look for those two functions. So we have m.onAttach, right? And what this does is it checks if it's TypeScript server, and if I just wanted to show this just to show you that you can do a couple things with capabilities. If it's the TypeScript server, then just turn off document formatting. And I'll show you how document formatting would work later if I set this to true by default. And then we have LSP keymaps, and this is another local function, right? So this function is only seen from within this file. So this function can't, it can't be referenced anywhere else, right? And this is all of our keymaps. So earlier I showed you if we do something like this, and then I have GL. So this is that here. So we can look for that particular keybind, and that's this one right here. So GL, what it does is it shows line diagnostics. That's what it does. It runs this function right here, show line diagnostics. Okay, the other thing we have too is we have the ability to create a format command here with Lua vim.lsp.buff formatting. And so what we're doing here is we're just creating that command. All right, so that's the onAttach. All it does is it sets up key maps. It checks if it's TS server, and if it is, it turns off formatting, and I'll demonstrate that later. And then we have LSP highlight document client. What does that mean, right? So we can actually do GD on this. So if we do GD, we'll jump right to that function, and we can see what it does. And so what this does is you can see it, but you probably just haven't really noticed it. Every single time I highlight over some like symbol or something like that, it highlights it, right? So I don't think it does it with keywords, but I don't know if function is really technically a keyword. I guess it is, but I guess it does it with this function. It does it with the name of the function. It'll do it with this client, so you can see like this client is highlighted and this one too, letting you know that like quickly at a glance all of the instances of client, right? And yeah, so it's just doing this highlighting. That's what this auto command does right here. All right, so let's move on a little bit further to capabilities. Capabilities is the first thing you're going to do is just going to make the protocol. So you'll do vim.lsp protocol make client capabilities. This will give you a bunch of basic capabilities. And then what we're going to do is CMP actually has a hook to update, to like work with your capabilities. So you're going to want to set this up as well. And we're kind of just, all we're doing here is we're doing cmp.mvimlsp. If you remember, that's from the plugin from earlier for CMP, like the LSP related CMP sources and stuff, and I'll show you that too. But basically this is just recommended that you do this to add capabilities for that as well. Okay, and the only other thing in this file would be the this setup. So you'll notice at the top, and I'll just explain kind of what this entire thing is, right? We create this this variable or whatever, this table called M, right? And this is just common practice that I've seen all over the place. I've just seen people just use M all over the place. I really don't even know why. But M is kind of just what I'm using here to say, like, okay, add anything with M dot, like whatever it is, that is something that at the end I'm going to export. So I'm going to return that. So you're going to be able to access capabilities because we have m.capabilities. You're going to be able to access m.onAttach because we have, well, you're going to be able to access onAttach because we have m.onAttach. And you'll be able to access this setup function up here because, you know, it's a part of M. What you won't be able to access is things like this local function here called LSP highlight document or LSP keymaps. These ones are just private functions to this particular file right here. All right, so I hope that makes sense. So we're going to do m.setup, and then we're going to do all of this stuff on setup. So what does this stuff do? For instance, you can see that this little icon right here is that icon right there. And what that's doing is it's setting, okay, diagnostic sign error to be this sign right here. So the same thing's true for warnings, hints, so on and so forth, right? So that's what we're doing for signs. Then we're just saying we're defining signs. So Vim has a built-in function for sign definition. That's what we're doing right here. So yeah, you can just basically copy and paste this to get your signs. The next thing will be a config. Now, virtual text is something that really annoys me. If I set this to true, and I'll set it to true, and the next time I'll open something, you'll notice that when I do this, I'll get some virtual text over here telling me what this GL will tell me. So this Lua syntax check missing symbol will actually just be in virtual text here, and that can get really, really noisy. Actually, I probably won't even turn it on, but just know that you have that option. All right, so we set up our signs because these are our signs up here. So we're just going to set signs active equals signs there. And let's see, what else? Update and insert, underline, that just makes sure to underline, I guess, when we have errors or diagnostics or whatever. We sort severity, that's fine. And then our floating windows. So floating windows are something like this guy here, or this guy here. And so we're just going to give that a rounded border, and we're going to make sure it looks minimal so it doesn't have a bunch of extra junk in it. And we're just going to get rid of the header and prefix as well. So you can play around with these options and, you know, change them if you want, but this is what I like personally. Other thing here is something for text document hover. So if we hover over top of something, and how I did that was capital K, so Shift K will hover over top of something, and you can kind of get this little blurb about it there. So what that's doing here is it's just giving it rounded borders. That's pretty much it. Now, it may do that by default. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, so that's basically that. Then there's also signature help, which is another function. Basically, we're just giving that rounded borders as well. So that's what these are doing here, if you're curious. All right, and that's this entire file. That's the handlers file. This is a very complicated file. So if you want to study this file and like fully understand what it's doing, you'll get a pretty decent understanding of Lua by the end of this. By the end of understanding this, you'll be able to export your own functions and all different other kinds of things. So let's go take a look at a few other things, and things should start making a little bit more sense now when we go into LSP. If we go into init, you'll see this setup method is being called on handlers, and that is this setup method right here. So that's how that's happening. Then also in LSP installer, you'll notice that we're passing on attach and we're passing capabilities, and that's where they're coming from. We're requiring user.lsp.handlers, which is this file we were just in here. And remember, we exported two things. We exported a function called onAttach, and we exported a table of capabilities, right? And that's here, right there. And then we returned M so that you can access them. All right, so we're back in here. That's how we get these. Now let's also talk about, before we talk about these settings, let me quickly go, because I said I would do this. Let's quickly go and talk about CMP and what you have to do to set up Compy so that you can get, like, you know, all of the LSP stuff in here, right? Okay, so first of all are these kind icons, right? So if we do something like require, right? You'll notice that we have this nice little F right there, and that F is coming from right here. It's a function and it knows that. The text is just text, so it's coming from the buffer. You'll notice that snippets, you can see that that's a little pair of scissors, that's a little pair of scissors here, and so on and so forth. So that's basically how we're getting all of those kind icons, is just from this table. All right, so moving on, we have sources. So in sources, if we go back to our plugins, so we'll go under user and then plugins. If you remember, we have this CMP Neovim LSP, which is one of the 3 plugins I told you to install. That's going to be a source for Compy. So if we go back over to here, its name is Neovim LSP, right? And so we want that at the top because we want our LSP completions to come first. We don't want them to come last. So you want to put this first to make sure that you get all of your LSP stuff before some of your other stuff. And it'll be weighted higher, but it'll still have some internal weighting algorithm so that it'll think that these are still not what you want, right? Like down here. So LSP won't always be at the top, but it'll help weight it a lot higher. So that's kind of the idea. All right, and that should be really all you have to do for Neovim CMP. The only other thing, remember, was to update the capabilities for Neovim CMP. So that's pretty much it. So make sure you have those kind icons, make sure you actually add it as a source, and then also update your capabilities here. All right, so that's quickly your CMP stuff and completion stuff. So now let's jump back over to Neovim LSP installer, this file I have here. And we're gonna talk about some settings that we can pass to specific language servers. So if it's this language server, we're gonna pass these settings. So let's first talk about Simneco Lua, and then we'll talk about JSON LS. So the Simneco Lua one, what it's doing is it's saying globals Vim. So if we got rid of this, right? If we just commented it out like that, and then we saved, I can open up another terminal here, and we'll do config nvim. Okay, and if we open up init.lua, and then we try to use vim dot, something, right? I guess right now that's going to complain, but let's actually go to somewhere where it's being referenced. So it should be referenced all over the place, right? It's telling us that it's an undefined global, right? And so that's kind of annoying because we know that Vim works in our config, right? We know that it's something that we can use. So that's something that we actually want to add to our settings. So if we jump back over to, actually this is that other one. So now we're back in our settings here. We're just going to add it back, and then that way Lua knows about this global called Vim. There's also some library stuff, so you can add this as well, but this is basically what I recommend you have in your Simneco Lua settings, just so you can, you don't have to deal with this annoying Vim problem, right? All right, so LSP installer again, and we'll talk about JSON LS. Okay, so there's a ton of schemas in here, right? So you can see as I scroll through all those, we have all these schemas, and then we finally get to the options down here. So what are these schemas? So if we look for something like, for instance, you might be familiar with package.json, right? So that's something that's usually always available for all JavaScript and Node projects, right? So what we can do with this is we can actually go and get a schema for package.json. So for instance, if we go into, let's see, repos, and then we'll go into my blog again, where there's a package.json. So we'll open up package.json here, and then we'll get rid of name, and then we'll start typing n, and then look, we have an LSP thing here that says, oh, do you want name? And then we can put a name, right? And it'll just have that completion for us. So like these are some things that are already built in. So if like we get rid of, I don't know what else is here. Once it's gone and it's already there, you see how it's not an option anymore, right? But if we got rid of like name and private and description, and we start typing name, all right, it's an option. If we start typing private, it's an option, and we'll just, you could set it to true or whatever you want. And then what was the other one? Description. We can say we want a description and put a description. So now JSON LS is smart enough to know I'm in a package.json file, and it knows certain keys that should be available in a package.json file. So that's some cool stuff you can do with this. I just have a bunch that I kind of added here that you can kind of go through. Maybe you use some of these. JSON is so often used for configuration for different projects and things, so this is really useful. At the top here, I left a link to the schema store. So all you have to do to set up your own is just give it a description, match on a particular file, and then point to a particular schema. And then we'll go take a look at the schema store here. And here's a ton of schemas. So if you find the one you're looking for, just point over to it, and that should be helpful. All right, so that is that. Let's see, which thing should we care about here? We're gonna toss this, and we'll come back to this here. So these are particular settings that you can pass to a particular language server. That's all these are. So if we wanted to like add another one, say for Pyright, so let's go take a look at Pyright really fast, because there will be something that we want to update. And let's do main.py here. And you'll notice okay, maybe I think this is a little bit too strict. Maybe I think it's okay that this can be none in Python. And I'm like, well, Pyright don't care so much about that. So what you can actually do is this. So we can go to, and this is where you're going to get all your settings for all of your different language servers and stuff like that. You can head over to the Neovim LSP config repository, and we can go to, I think it's all the way at the bottom, and you can read all this documentation too. You'll learn a lot from this, but we're going to go to server configurations.md. All right. And so now you can see all these different, language servers here. And I'm going to leave a link to all these. I'm going to leave links to all of these web pages and repositories and stuff in the description of this video, so you'll be able to access them really easily. But we're going to be looking for, in this case, let's see, where is Pyright? Okay, Pyright. And what we can do is there's usually like an arrow under it, and we can click on available settings. And now we can see that we have a ton of available settings here we can set, just like how we did for some Neovim Lua earlier, or JSON LS with the schemas and things. And you can even see that here are some default values, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to look for something that, makes it complain a little less hard. And for this, it's going to be python.analysis.type checking mode, right? So now what we can do is we can come in here, and we'll just copy a chunk right here and just paste it. And we're going to say if the server name is, Pyright, like that, and we're going to change these options. So we're just going to cut some Neko, and we're going to put Pyright like that. And we'll just press dot to do the same thing there. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to create another file under settings called Pyright, just like that. And now we're going to go under settings, and we're going to, actually, I don't really like how NetRW does this. So we're just going to do E and Lua, whoops, E, Lua, and then we're going to do user LSP, settings, and then Pyright, whoops, Pyright, like this, .lua. And in this, and I already had this focused over here, so that's why I took over my NetRW thing. What we're going to do is we're going to just quickly go and look at one of our other ones. So let's go under settings and this, and maybe actually we'll do some Neko because it'll just be easier. And we're just going to grab this guy here, come back, actually we'll just do it from here, I guess that'll be easier. And then we'll just do E again, and actually we could probably just go up like that. All right, and instead of all this Lua junk, we're just gonna toss that. One good way to do this might be just to be over top of this, press the % sign, and then toss all of that. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go see what kind of options we have available to us. So let's come back over here. And we know it's under Python, analysis, and type checking mode, right? So this is what we want. Just so it'll look a lot like this right here. So Python, analysis, but they don't have type checking mode. So that's what we're going to put. All right, so we're going to do Python equals a table. Close that table and press enter. All right. And then we're going to do analysis. So, and this stuff won't be like, you won't be able to like get completion for it, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then from here, we're going to put type, how was it? Let's see really fast. We have type checking mode in camel case. So type checking mode, and we're going to set that equal to off like that. Okay. So now what should happen is when we open this guy up again, you'll see that not only is this type checking problem gone here, but these aren't even errors anymore. So, you know, that's one way that you can pass settings to a particular language server, and I just kind of demonstrated it there so you can see how to do it. All right, what else really is there? I think that's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much everything I'd want you to know about when you get started. We did an actual example of doing, of passing settings to a language server. We set up language servers. We kind of made it all easier. We have a ton of JSON schemas now so that we get that. We have the Vim global, so when you're editing your config, it doesn't get in the way. One other thing I will kind of recommend that you get would be for mvim CMP. So if we go under mvim CMP, we go here for this repository. So this was the video before this in the playlist. We set this up. And then if we go down to various completion sources, we'll click on this link here. And there will be a completion source in here that's pretty useful for when you're working on your config. And that one will be called CMP Neovim Lua. Okay. So what we can do is we can just grab this guy up here, username and repository, and we can head over to our plugins. So we're going to go up a couple here and go into, actually, yeah, back into user under plugins, and we're just going to add a source here, so same as the other ones. I think, yeah, we just paste it there. We'll save this file, install it, and so now we have that. So the only other thing we're going to need to do, so this is kind of exactly how we did this before, is we're going to go into cmp.lua. We're going to scroll down to sources, and we're going to go quickly find out what the name of this source is. The name is Neovim Lua, right? So that's the name of this source. So we're going to change this to Neovim Lua. And And I think, yeah, that should be the name of the source. So we're going to go like this, and we have Neovim LSP here. We're going to do Lua. You can leave this as LSP, but I'm going to make it more obvious. So I'm going to do just Lua, or like Neovim Lua, so we know what's coming from that particular source. And from there, I'm just going to save this and close. And we have a bunch of stuff open. All right, and now if we do something like, I think like vim dot, you'll see now we have a bunch of things that come from m.lua. So you weren't getting like regular vim dot, like if you just did vim dot before, you wouldn't get all these things, these helpful things that are built into this global Vim object that we have available to us, right? So you'll get that, and I think there should be some, like if we do like API dot, this is where a lot of the good stuff is. So if you're like developing a plugin or something like that, this should be really, really useful for you. But yeah, so you'll have that option there. So I think that's pretty useful. That's something that I don't think a ton of people know about. So that's like another secret, I guess, to many. But yeah, so that's kind of like an Easter egg at the end that I did there. So to wrap up, I think, we set up the language server protocol stuff. I showed you a really easy way to install them. The setup was not super easy, but it is pretty rewarding. You learned a lot of Lua. You learned kind of how to export functions and tables and all that kind of stuff from files. So yeah, I think, if it's not too much, at least it was somewhat productive and a decent learning experience, if anything else. So if you don't want to write all that code from, just the video or whatever, you can go and grab it from the Neovim from scratch repository. To get the exact code in this, from this video, you can head over to the 06 LSP branch here. And I'll actually just push up, I guess, just everything that's right here so you can check that out. All right, so if you want to support the project, you can sponsor me over on GitHub. If you want to support me on Patreon, you can also do that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.